Hey, audit friends and family. Question for you. Do you find that it's getting harder and harder to hire talented and qualified auditors? It's a debate that's been going on for years, but I think now, more than ever, we are having increasing conversations. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to Audit Bites, the podcast that helps auditors become awesome. Join us for bite-sized info and education to excel in your auditing career.
All right, welcome to episode number 57 of Audit Bites. The audit profession is in peril. That is what we've titled this episode. And so let me ask you all a question. Actually, several, but the first is, do you find it hard to hire talented professionals? Or once you get them in, do you find that it's hard to motivate them enough to do the work? Or do you find it hard to keep them? I've been talking to a lot of audit professionals recently, and they have expressed concern in the profession with being able to hire people to actually do the job. And so the big question that I have for everyone is, how do you feel about the long term career prospects for auditors? How do you feel about the long term career prospects for auditors? Now, as we get started today, first thing I want to say is this is not a conversation to be disparaging on the profession because I love audit. As you can see right over here with me wearing the I Love Audit t shirt. I think that it is a great profession, but I also think that at certain points in time, you have to have some hard conversations. At certain points in time, you have to have some hard conversations. So, back to the question that I just asked, how do you feel about the long term career prospects in internal auditing? Now, I find that more and more I have to say this lately. If you're on the LinkedIn app and you're finding that you can't communicate, because I get messages throughout the shows saying that they can't comment on the app. Sometimes it's buggy and sometimes you just need to update it. If you're having real big problems, go over to YouTube because on the YouTube channel, you can drop in comments and we can show those just like we can on LinkedIn. And besides, I just really want you guys to go over to my YouTube channel. I mean, so it is at that audit guy and then the number one on YouTube. But if you're having problems commenting on LinkedIn, go over to the YouTube channel. So the question I have is, how do you feel about the long-term prospects being in the audit profession? Now, there was a report released recently from Deloitte that talked about audit committee expectations, audit committee concerns. So let's talk about some of the things that our audit committees are concerned about, and you'll see why I actually decided to do this particular podcast episode, or one of the reasons. So, the Deloitte Audit Committee Practices Report, Common Threads Across Audit Committees, March 2024. That is the title of the report. If you want to link to it, go follow Hal Garin on LinkedIn. He posted the link to it this morning, and he's just the perfect person to follow if you are an internal auditor. But look at this snippet that I got from the report. According to audit committees, top priorities over the next 12 months. First, cybersecurity, completely understandable. Second, enterprise risk management, again, completely understandable. And third, finance and internal audit talent. As a matter of fact, when you dig deeper into the report, 46% of audit committees surveyed said that they spend 46% of their time, I'm sorry, time spent discussing talent, 46% of them noted that they address it quarterly. So 46% of those surveyed said that they talk about internal audit and finance talent quarterly. The only thing that I'm disappointed with here is finance and internal audit they're combined. So we don't really know how much was finance versus how much was internal audit. But if they're talking about it on a quarterly basis, that means that it must be a concern to them. And so for us, we have to wonder, is it really a concern? Right? Because it could be a marketing problem. Maybe we don't clearly communicate to our audit committees the things that we're doing to attract and get good talent. Or do we really have a problem? Either way, at this point, we have the ear of our audit committee, right? So now, 23% of those surveyed said that they discuss the matter at least annually. So it is being discussed and it is an audit committee concern. And by the way, these items listed here on the screen are in order of importance, right? So the audit committee surveyed, based on this Deloitte research, 69% said cybersecurity is a top concern. Second concern is enterprise risk management. And the third most concern coming from audit committees is finance and internal audit talent. And the date on this report is March 2024. So this is fresh information. This is very fresh information. So now, what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about 3 reasons I think the audit profession is in peril, but I'm not going to just naysay. I'm going to talk about what I think we can do to turn it around. But before we go there, here's some things that we can do to address our audit committee members' concerns. Cybersecurity, auditors. What do you know about cybersecurity? Now, the big banks actually have a lot of audit department staff members who focus specifically on cybersecurity. But if you really want to carve out something good in your career, why don't you study cybersecurity? Go over to Coursera. Google has a cybersecurity certificate program. It's a very good program. I'm actually on the last module. I've been on the last module for several months because I breezed through the beginning and then I kind of got stuck. But it teaches you a lot of what you need to know about cybersecurity risk, but not just risk, but how to do it. They're hands-on workshops. Now imagine being an auditor at an organization and you actually get the Google cybersecurity certification. You see, this is one of the things that audit committee members are looking for because within that survey, they said that they were somewhat concerned that auditors didn't actually understand business operations. Now, enterprise risk management. How many of you are abreast of what enterprise risk management is? Now, what it really is, not what we pretend it to be. For those of you who are in the financial services sector, you know what ERM really is and what it really looks like. Most other sectors don't have full-blown enterprise risk management initiatives in their organization. So if you really want to stand out in your career, those would be 2 things that I would suggest you start studying now. And again, Coursera, it's about $40 or $50 a month. You can finish the program in about 3.5 months. So for about $150, you can get you a certification in cybersecurity. Okay, so now, with that said, let's get back to the reason that we're here. Let's get back to the reason that we are here. The audit profession is in peril. That is what I've said. So let's start with reason number 1. So the first reason that I'm saying the audit profession is in peril is that we have created a leaky pipeline. And that's not just some fancy play on words. Let me explain what I mean by that. Many auditors, and now we're talking specifically about internal auditors, many internal auditors have accounting degrees. As a matter of fact, many are certified public accountants. If you look at most of the job postings, they say, we're looking for internal auditors who are CPAs. You know, they can be CIAs, but I'm thinking CIA is like the predominant certification for internal auditors. But most auditors have accounting degrees. Most people say they want certified public accountants, or if you are overseas, the ACCA, or the equivalent of one of those. So now you're probably wondering, well, why do I think that that's a problem? Well, if we look at new industry trends, the accounting industry is struggling. Now, this article is from the Financial Times, and it says that there's a dire shortage of accountants, and it prompts for a wake up call. This article is from January 3rd of this year. And don't get it confused. We've known that there was going to be a shortage for quite some time. Now, this article is from the Financial Times, which we all know is a reputable news source, but it doesn't stop there. Here's an article from Accountancy Age, and it's titled, How Much of a Threat is the Talent Shortage to the Accounting Profession? Now, oh, you guys can only see half of that one. Let me do this. There we go. This one says, How much of a threat is the talent shortage to the accounting profession? So let's dig into some numbers a little bit. The American Institute of Certified Public Accountants estimates that about 75% of CPAs would have reached retirement eligibility by 2020. Are you hearing me? 75% will have reached retirement age by 2020. Now, that doesn't mean that they will retire or did retire, but they reached retirement age by 2020. But it gets a little bit worse because now we also know that there's falling enrollment in accounting. There's falling enrollment in accounting. So, what does that mean? That means that fewer and fewer people are enrolling in the accounting curriculum in college. As a matter of fact, let's look at those numbers. This looks pretty bad, right? The number of college students completing bachelor's degrees in accounting at U.S. universities fell 7.8% in the 2021-2022 school year. Now, that's continuing a downward trajectory, though. That's continuing a downward trajectory. It has been falling since 2010. It has been falling since 2010. Now, I know you're still probably wondering, well, what does that have to do with internal auditors? Well, again, like I said, many auditors have accounting degrees because that is what we look for historically. And I'm saying that that's probably the wrong take. But also, membership in the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants has fallen. It fell from 430,000 in 2017 to 415,000 last year. Now, in the meantime, membership in the Institute of Internal Auditors has grown. It's grown exponentially, especially during the years where Richard Chambers was the CEO. But that just makes sense because internal auditing is more than just numbers. We'll talk about that in just one moment, but let's talk about the CPA problem too. Let's talk about the CPA problem too. So here's the CPA problem. I know some of you are wondering, what in the world is he talking about with the CPA problem? But here's the CPA problem. Fewer and fewer people are actually taking and passing the CPA exam. Now, at one point in time, you could graduate from college with a 4-year degree in accounting and then take the CPA exam. I actually took the CPA exam with an undergraduate degree in accounting. Around, I want to say 2000, maybe 2001, you had to have additional credit hours in college in order to take the exam. So initially, all you needed was 120 hours in an accounting degree in order to take the CPA exam. They increased it to 150 hours, which meant that people needed to go back to school or stay in school a little bit longer. Now, back then, the cost of college was relatively inexpensive. My entire 4-year undergraduate degree was less than $20,000, and I mean for all 4 years. Now, that's what, maybe half a semester? I'm halfway joking, but the cost of college has increased exponentially. And so now you take the cost of a 4-year degree and then you add another year onto that. And some people are actually opting out because when you look at the cost of 5 years of college, along with the salary that you might get directly out of school, it is causing this downward pressure, and people are not getting as many accounting degrees as they would historically. Now, let's break this down even further because there seems to be a rift between the AICPA and some of the state societies because the state of Minnesota is really toiling with the idea of going back to a 120-hour requirement. Now, the problem or the potential problem here might be that some states may not recognize CPAs who are licensed in Minnesota if that happens. But the bigger point that I want to stress here is that at least one state has recognized the problem or a potential problem with the way we are currently obtaining CPAs. Now, whether you agree with anything that I've just said or not, the data does not lie. There's a drop in enrollment in accounting students, there's a drop in enrollment in AICPA membership, and there's a drop in CPAs. That, coupled with the fact that 75% of CPAs would have been eligible to retire in the year 2020, indicates a serious problem. And so that's why I say the first problem that we have as internal auditors in attracting talent is that we've created a leaky pipeline. Our pipeline is highly dependent on CPAs when financial risk are only a small part of our job. And I'm going to get to that with some data and statistics in just a few moments, but just bear with me. And I'm wondering, what do you all think about what I've said so far? Now, we've got my guy Bokang here, and he says it's the same there in South Africa. It's the same there in South Africa. Okay, so first thing that I'm saying is one of the reasons our profession is potentially in peril is because we've created a leaky pipeline. Hiring CPAs is one of our high criteria can be detrimental for us. How many of you as internal auditors actually look at numbers on a day-to-day basis? It may be a small part of the job, but mostly you're looking at IT risk, you're looking at operational risk, you're looking at segregation of duties. And don't get me wrong, I am a certified public accountant. So I'm not saying that there is no value in that, but what I'm saying is that we in our profession may be to a point where we still place too much value in it. With that said, let's get down to the second reason why, and let's tie some of this together. So, the second reason why is we're allocating significant time to the wrong risk. We're allocating significant time to the wrong risk. What do I mean by that? Well, when you think about any organization, there are a lot of risk within those organizations. There are many different types of risk. First, there's strategic risk. What if you're actually implementing the wrong strategy within your organization? One of the best examples I can think of this is Blockbuster. Blockbuster Video didn't recognize that their strategy of still having physical storefronts, allowing people to rent VHS tapes, was a bad one at some point. So, strategic risk, compliance risk. What if we're not in compliance with new laws, rules, and regulations? For example, I was just reading today that in the US, the Federal Trade Commission has just enacted a new regulation banning the use of AI voices in robo phone calls. In those solicitations that we get from people, they ban the use of AI. So a lot of companies are now going to have to change what they do or face fines and penalties. And I can't remember exactly what the fines and penalties were. But we also have financial risk. Okay, so now let's pause right here for just one moment. Financial risk is really what your CPAs are looking for. And oftentimes your external auditors are looking hard at financial risk, and your internal auditors should be looking a little bit at your financial risk because we have these other risks. Well, over the years, since the passing of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act many auditors are spending an exorbitant amount of time on financial related risk. I saw a recent survey from the Institute of Internal Auditors that said many internal audit shops or audit departments. Let me say that again. I saw a recent survey from the Institute of Internal Auditors that said that many internal audit departments are spending anywhere from 35 to 55% of their time on Sarbanes Oxley. Now, imagine if you're in an audit department and you're spending 50% of your time on one specific type of risk. So, we also have operational risk, we also have reputational risk. There's cybersecurity risk, and I just showed everyone that that is the top risk that our audit committees are thinking about right now. We also have market risk. What if the market we're in changes? Legal risk, and finally, environmental risk. Yet, auditors allocate significant time to, drum roll please, guess which one? The financial risk. Now, let's bring this full circle just a little bit more. Before we do that, let's go to our audience. Leslie Hambrick, always good to see you. She says that financial data is only part of the job, so much more to the role. Knowledge can be taught, but soft skills cannot. Leslie brings up a great point because for those of you who don't know, and I don't know how you would not know if you're watching us right now, I'm an audit trainer and a keynote speaker. A lot of my training is on the soft skills. Some of it is on some technical skills. For example, we have a training coming up at the end of April that is actually going to be free, and it is on artificial intelligence. It is on artificial intelligence. But I have a lot of training on how to talk to people, how to negotiate, how to deliver difficult news, how to deal with difficult people. Those are some of the top skills that we actually need. But yet we're spending a majority of our time. Let me see if I can point to it right here on right there on financial risk. As a matter of fact, I almost pulled it up, but then I thought I better not. I almost pulled up a couple of job descriptions that I saw on LinkedIn, job postings. They said, we're looking for an internal audit manager. Primary responsibilities, the Sarbanes-Oxley Compliance Initiative. I'd argue that that's not internal auditing. That's Sarbanes-Oxley. Those are two different disciplines. Now, if you work for an audit department that does SOX, I get it. I understand. That is where the organization has strategically said they want to put it. But let me just show you why. Let's talk about why that is an additional risk. So some of you may be familiar with the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. Every other year, they do a report to the nations. And with that report to the nations, what they do is they survey a ton of companies. It's a 77 question questionnaire. It's regarding fraud cases and the details of those fraud cases. So these are actual frauds that have occurred, right? So for the most recent one, it was out in 2022, so there should be one coming out this year. Respondents were asked to provide information about the single largest occupational fraud case that they had investigated, and it had to meet several criteria. The first criteria was the case had to have involved occupational fraud. In other words, fraud committed by a person against the organization that they worked for. Second, the investigation had to have occurred between January 2020 and the time of the survey. Third, the investigation must have been completed by the time of the survey. And fourth, the respondents must have been reasonably sure that the perpetrators were identified. Now, here's why this is important, and here's why I bring this up. Here were the survey results. When it came to frauds, 86% of frauds were asset misappropriation, with the median loss being $100,000. 50% of frauds, excuse me for one moment, 50% of frauds were corruption, with the median loss being $150,000. 9% of frauds were financial statement fraud. Now, granted, The median loss was almost $600,000, which is high. But when we measure risk, we look at likelihood and impact. At 9%, that's not a high likelihood of a financial statement fraud occurring. Now, let me also say, while I'm here, I want to make a few other points while I'm here. Okay, let me pull this graph back up so that you all can see it real big. I want to make a few other points while I'm here. In no way am I saying that the PCAOB, which is the body that regulates Sarbanes-Oxley in the United States, that they are doing a bad thing. As a matter of fact, if you read their auditing standards, they clearly delineate what the expectations are for Sarbanes-Oxley. And at this point in time, their most recent reports are showing that many organizations are still failing to meet the standard. Now, the criteria are very clear. So what it tells me is that the problem is the execution, the way many organizations are doing it. And many of them do have it up under the internal auditing department. So now, for us as internal auditors, our profession might be in peril. And we're going to run through the reasons again, and we're coming close to the third one. So, the first reason was we've created a leaky pipeline. And what I mean by that is one of the criteria we look for when hiring is CPA, when only a small part of the work requires you to actually understand financial statements. Okay. The second thing is we're allocating significant time to the wrong risk. A survey from the Institute of Internal Auditors said that many internal audit departments are allocating 50% or more of their time to Sarbanes-Oxley, which is a financial risk, which is only one type of risk. Let's see if we can go back to our chart here. Look at all the types of risks that we have, and we're spending 50% of our allocated resources on financial risk. Okay, so that third reason that I have listed here is our professional development can be a pathway to nowhere. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. But before I do, let's go back to our audience very, very quickly. Asim is here and he says, I finally made it. Happy to participate. I'm happy to have you here. Very happy to have you here. Let's see. Who is this? Bokang. All right. I know one auditor, one internal auditor who is a CFE. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of different certifications count, you know? So, yes, Bokang, thank you. I was trying to remember. CPA is CA in South Africa. And I think in some other parts of the world, it's what, the ACCA or something like that? Or is the ACCA the pre or forget it. I just got a little tongue tied right there. So I'm just going to be quiet because somebody will drop it into the chat for me and tell me the hierarchy for those of you in other parts of the world. Okay, so now let's talk about this last point. Our professional development can be a pathway to nowhere. But let me just go ahead and do a spoiler alert. There is good news because if you've read the new IIA standards, they address some of this in what I'd like to say is a very uh, productive way. That's the word I'm looking for. So we're going to talk about that. But here's what I mean by our professional development can be a pathway to nowhere. Historically, audit training has kind of been lackluster or the expectations. And here's what I mean by that. For CIAs, we're required to get 40 hours of training per year. For CPAs, you're required to get 40 hours of training per year. And sometimes they dictate the categories. You know, CPAs need to have 2 hours of ethics. And then in 2017, I believe it is, the IIA said you need to have at least, 2 hours of ethics. Did I say 20? 2 hours of ethics. And then in 2017, I think the IIA said that we had to have 2 hours of ethics. But oftentimes, the training that we get, we find free training that is simply surface level. Doesn't really get us down into some details. Until recently, most weren't stressing the importance of soft skills. But if you've heard me at any point in time, you understand that I believe that curiosity and our ability to ask questions is the most powerful skill that any auditor can have in any sector. And I believe that because I've worked in so many different industries and I've been able to adjust because it's going in and asking the right questions and then doing some research and getting up to speed quickly because it's all about risk and controls. If you understand what the risks are in any industry, you can ask questions to figure out what the controls are. So, for example, I've worked in financial services, oil and gas, higher education, healthcare, mortgage servicing, mortgage production. I'm forgetting a few right now, but I've had to get up to speed very quickly. So, historically, a lot of our training has been extremely lackluster. Now, with the new standards 3.2, continuing professional development, I really, really like what's being said in this new standard. And I'm going to talk about some of it and how we can capitalize on it as internal auditing professionals. So, the requirements, here's what it says internal auditors must maintain and continually develop their competencies to improve the effectiveness and quality of internal audit services. All right, now, let's be real. That's just a blanket statement, but it gets a whole lot better. Let's talk about how much better it gets. Internal auditors must pursue continuing professional development, including education and training. Now, here's where it gets even better because education and training. Now, how many of you knew that education and training are different? Those are different. Let's talk about it for a minute. Education focuses on imparting knowledge and developing critical thinking skills, and it helps foster intellectual growth. The primary goal of education is to provide a broad understanding of various subjects and concepts. Now, the scope of education often covers a wide range of disciplines and topics, including theory as well as academic subjects. So, now the outcome of education, it aims to promote personal growth and creativity and lifelong learning. Training, on the other hand, training is focused on acquiring specific skills, specific knowledge, specific competencies. The purpose of training is to enhance performance in a specific area or a specific job role. Now, I'm not going to stay here too long, and I'm going to go further into this standard and what it says. The considerations for implementation. So, if you have not read the new standards yet, shame on you. But the standards are divided into, okay, here's our expectation. And then there's a section that says considerations for implementation. I want you to pay close attention to the considerations for expectation. I think I put the cart before the horse here. Okay, wait, no, I didn't. Okay, so considerations for expectation. It says continuing professional development may include self study. It's always included that, right? On the job training. Wait a minute now. So if we're saying that CPE can be on the job training, that means that your company can train you on the job and issue you a certificate for it now. Okay. Let's go on. Opportunities to learn new skills on special assignments, such as rotational programs. So, wait, if I'm in the audit department, but then I'm put on a rotational program to work in other departments, now this can be included as CPE. Now, somebody's going to have to correct me if I'm reading this wrong, but English is my first language, and this is under the considerations for implementation of getting continuing professional education. It also says mentorship down there. So if you decide to get an audit mentor and you all have a structured standard meeting time and place and topics, you can get CPEs for that. Hmm. Supervisory feedback and then free and paid education. Now, I want to know from you all, are you hearing and seeing the same things that I'm hearing and seeing? And my man Shafundu, it's always good to see you. Shafundu said, point number 2, and not pivoting fast enough if risk prior, if rip. Let me take a step back. Shafundu says, point number 2, and not pivoting fast enough if risk if priorities slash risk profiles change. Ah, you make a good point. This is why I like talking to you, Shafundu. By the way, Shafundu is in my WhatsApp group. If you all are not in my WhatsApp group, you should probably get in it. Okay, so now, the standards go a bit further too. They also say that um, to improve the quality of performing internal audit services, internal auditors should seek opportunities to learn about trends and best practices, as well as emerging topics, risks, trends, and changes that may affect the organization for which they work and the internal audit profession. Now, if you missed the earlier part of the show, I said that according to a new research report from Deloitte, audit committees are most concerned with cybersecurity. And then the third most highest priority thing on their list is finance and internal audit talent. But I also gave you a resource where you, as everyday auditors, can learn about cybersecurity. Again, go over to Coursera. Google has a cyber program. I would definitely take it. It is a very good program. But what this also means is we need to learn about the industries that we're in. So we need to start going to industry related conferences, not just internal audit related conferences. We need to learn more about soft skills and how to talk to people. So, what I'm saying is, we need to think about training differently. We need to think about training differently. While we're here on this topic and thinking about training differently, go over to my website, and what we do is we provide CPEs for listening to a podcast. Later on tonight or tomorrow morning, you should see this one uploaded and available for CPE credit. Now, these aren't necessarily free, but they are lower cost options. But here's what I'm going to do. Anybody who wants CPE for this particular podcast, 24 hours after I release it, it will be free. Then the price will go up. But we have to think differently about getting our CPEs. We're not done yet, though. I've got a question for you all. I see the light bulbs going off in the chat over in LinkedIn. What qualities do you look for in internal auditors? Because I'm going to tell you what qualities I think we should start looking for. I think that I'm getting a little bit tired of seeing job applications, job postings saying, must have a CPA, 10 years of experience with big four accounting firms. Because here's the problem. That is a part of the leaky pipeline that I'm talking about, because a lot of the, and again, I worked in big four, so I'm not saying this to slight them. This is just a reality. A lot of those auditors do Sarbanes-Oxley auditing. They do SOX testing. So now they're only focused on one type of risk that we have. Now, if your audit department wants to focus solely on Sarbanes-Oxley, then great. But you have to understand what it is that you're looking for. So let me tell you the characteristics I would look for in some internal auditors. I would look for people who actually held sales jobs before. Why? Because as a salesperson, you have to understand what someone else's need is. You have to try to anticipate their need, and then you have to try to sell them something that meets their need. Doesn't that sound similar to when we come up with issues during audit engagements? We have to be able to communicate why this is important to our audit clients. We definitely want them to accept what it is that we've found if it is a risk to the organization. So people who've had former sales jobs, they make some really good internal auditors. People who have participated in or have run a family business. Those are great people. Why? Because another thing that Deloitte report said audit committee concerns were is that auditors did not understand the business. Well, if you've never run a business, it's kind of difficult to really understand real risk prioritization. You only have a certain amount of money. Do you spend it on advertising, marketing, or improving a small flaw in your product? From an ethical standpoint, which one would come first? As auditors, we like to say, you need to fix this problem, but we need to also consider the underlying financial, regulatory, and emotional aspects behind it too. And people who've ever been in a family business or My next one, people who've been entrepreneurs actually understand a lot of that. So if you know any auditors who've ever been entrepreneurs, hmm, they probably have deeper and more valuable insights. So, first, people who've had sales jobs. Second, people who've been in family businesses. Third, people who've been entrepreneurs. Fourth, career pivoters. I found that a lot of people who've pivoted into internal auditing from other careers have made some of the best auditors. Why? Because they have been so curious and inquisitive. And those are some of the best skills that we should have. Curiosity, our ability to ask questions, and then our ability to get along with others. Let's see what the audience is saying here. And then I have one more thing for you. Let's see. Shafundu is saying, candidates that are curious and able to ask questions, right? Which is why I wrote my book, Ask Better Questions, Get Better Answers, Perform Better Audits. Because I think that people who ask questions make some of the best auditors. And I promise you, I did not pay Shafundu to say that. Not this time, at least. I did not pay Shafundu to say that, even though we are friends and I really respect Shafundu. Now, now, today, talked about a lot of stuff. And we're not done yet, but there's a few other things that I want to talk about. One thing is, I've said this on a few different occasions. One thing that we as internal auditors need is a support group where we can just talk about the things that are bothering us, but not to complain and cry and moan, but to come up with solutions. And with that said, I want you to join me in the audit support group. The next one that we're going to have is March the 15th, this Friday at 8:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, 6:30 a.m. Pacific Time, and 7:30 Mountain Time. It is free. The only thing that I ask is that you sign up for it and you come ready to participate. This is our second one. And in this one, what we're doing is we're just going to try and talk about what are some of the most important topics that are bothering us right now. And then we'll start to build out our agenda as we have these once per month. We'll build out our agenda together. It is a place for us to support one another. It is virtual. The other thing that I ask is that come prepared to turn your cameras on so that we can see one another, network with one another. Now, if you want to know how to get there, there it is right there. Go to links.thatauditguy.com/events. It should pull up any virtual events that I'm doing in the near future, and that's probably the only one listed right now. Now, let's go back to the audience for just one moment. Leslie said, great book. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you so much. If you've not read it, go read it. It is a good book, and I'm not just saying that because I wrote it. I put my heart, sweat, and tears into it. Now, let's go back to my man, Bokang, and he says, I hire attitude. It's either you are an internal auditor or not. As their team leader, I believe I can build a system to obtain certification. Exactly. But hard to train character. Love internal audit. It's fun and productive. Love to serve. Love ethical way of life. Then have good work ethics. And let's get back to Bokang's point too about you can actually create a system to help people get the certification. Here's what I do for people that were working for me when I was an audit director. I would give you time to study for the CIA exam at work. Minimal time, like 30 minutes a day, because first of all, it helped you to build a consistent habit. Second of all, it showed that I'm committed to your success. And the people that I've got a little fruit fly flying around in here with me. The people, the people that I've done that with have given me feedback saying that it was one of the best things for them in their career. So someone with a good attitude that wants to learn, to me, outpaces someone who has a ton of skills and abilities but a bad attitude. But also, you do want some people on your team that are CPAs, but when I see every position looking for a CPA, we have created a pipeline that is leaky. So let's talk about it again. 3 reasons the audit profession might be in peril. We have created a leaky pipeline. We oftentimes look for people that have skills that aren't in the predominant risk areas, which is number two. We're allocating significant time to the wrong risk. Are financial risk important? Absolutely. So don't ever say I said that. But again, with a recent IIA survey saying that many audit departments are spending more than 50% of their time on financial risk, we're missing out. And the third reason is our professional development can be a pathway to nowhere. But as I read the new standards, apparently we have new avenues for getting training. Now, I don't know if these are actually new avenues or if the IIA just spelled it out more clearly in the new standards. Either way, I love what I'm seeing because it helps us to grow as audit professionals. So, before we part ways for today, there are a couple more things that I want to say. First thing is, I just did that wrong. First thing is, I want to invite you to join the audit support group next meeting this Friday. There's the link. If you're on your laptop, there's a QR code that should take you to the link. Go sign up and you'll receive a Google Meet link after you sign up. The next thing is, let's not forget the 3 reasons our profession might be in peril: leaky pipeline, wrong risk allocation, and we got to get really good training. Now, with that said, thank you for joining us on episode number 57 of Audit Bites. If you want to get CPE for listening to a podcast, give me about 24 hours. You'll see it on my website, thatauditguy.com. Until next time, thank you all for joining me.
Thank you for watching this episode of Audit Bites. If you receive value from this podcast, do us a favor. First, tell other auditors. Second, give us a 5-star review. And finally, talk to Robert about training your auditors. Our contact information is on our website, www.thatauditguy.com. It's also where you will find our course catalog, on-demand courses, a kick-butt blog, other podcasts, Robert's best-selling books, and last but not least, audit merch. That's right, we have audit hats, shirts, mugs, and more. Thanks for watching and listening. See you next episode.